All right, good morning and welcome to the Employability Skills Series, where we explore the top skills employers are looking for in candidates. Each week, we will cover a different topic and thoughts and insights from professionals in a variety of industries. I am your host, Megan Morrow, Associate Director of Career Services Business Careers. So just a reminder, everybody, that this meeting is recorded and the links are being provided by your professors. If anybody is not in the Business 1115 or in my professional development and wants the link, you can email me directly. Please scan the QR code or click the link in the comments, the chat pod to mark your attendance. And please make sure your microphones are muted. And if you have any questions, you can put those in the chat pod. All right, so today I have Ray Winterholt with us. He is the Assistant Director of Community Living. He's my guest. And today we'll be discussing problem solving and critical thinking skills. So good morning, Ray. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Excellent. Well, Ray, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So in my role here at Florida Southern College, I am as Megan said, the Assistant Director of Community Living, and I oversee specifically our continuing students. So that is all our off-campus properties, our houses, our apartments. And so I have a staff of 3 community directors that report to me. And so obviously, if you're a student, you're familiar with community living and working with housing and working with the community building aspect of Florida Southern College. My previous role, so I've been in higher education. This is year 6 for me. I've worked at other universities as a resident director or a community director here. And then beforehand, I worked for the Disney production studios in Burbank, California. I went to school for film production. So I got to work in the kind of corporate world for a little bit. And so, that's the majority of my work experience. Then I'm also very involved in the local community and different nonprofits as well. So, yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Very cool. Well, very nice. Thank you again for joining us. So today we're talking about like problem solving and critical thinking in the workplace. So, why is that even important? Like, what does that even look like? Or, why is that a skill that we should develop to be employable?
Yeah. So, I think, first of all, let me say that it's kind of funny. I had this conversation with one of my community director staff yesterday about critical thinking. I think a lot of time when, as a young person, first going into the working world, we think critical thinking, we get it confused with maybe having the answers, and I have to figure out the answer for myself, but critical thinking a lot of the times really is working out a problem to the point of knowing the correct question to ask your supervisor in a lot of scenarios. So you've exhausted all the rest of your resources. You've asked the 4 W's and the 1 H, what, right, who, what, when, where, and then how. You've done the work for yourself to the extent that you can, and then you formulate a question. And a lot of the times that question is thinking through part of critical thinking is thinking what is the question you're going to ask, and then going to the appropriate person or your supervisor and asking that question. And so I think a lot of times critical thinking is and problem solving is just knowing your resources and knowing the right question to ask, but also showing that you put in the necessary work to arrive at that question. Not necessarily an answer, but a question to solve the problem that you're facing.
Yeah, I think that's really important that to make that distinction between like you said, having all the answers and knowing when to ask the questions, because, we don't have all the answers and we need to know that we can go to people that probably have a little bit more seniority or been around a little bit longer and know where to go for that.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's essential. And not being afraid to ask the question, I think is a big part of that. And critical thinking and problem solving often has to do with communication and clarity. One of my favorite, I guess, leadership gurus and authors is Simon Sinek, right? And I've heard him say on multiple occasions. He says it this way, but don't be afraid to be like the dumbest person in the room. Uh, don't be afraid to ask the question that maybe something doesn't make sense. So if you're not you're probably we can if you have the confidence to know that okay, I'm not a person that is not intelligent, right? I have intelligence. I'm going to ask this question because I need clarity in order to do my job. So don't be fearful of asking a question, even if you feel like it might not be. Um, it might be a stupid question. Ask it anyways.
Yeah. No, I like that you say that because in the classroom, I will tell students all the time, if you have a question, please ask it. There's probably somebody sitting here right next to you that has the exact same question. And that way, if you ask it, be brave, be the brave one to ask the question, and let everybody else kind of glean from that, get that benefit from you asking it. So yeah, not being afraid, not afraid to look stupid, but being more brave to say like, hey, I just don't know, I need some guidance.
Right.
Um, can you like kind of maybe tell us a time where like you had to like really use this and employ this maybe either in this role or in a previous role, like kind of what happened, what was involved, and then like what was the outcome?
Sure. Absolutely. Um, I think one of the big the big part of my position currently is assessing our some of our systems and our processes that we have our what we call student staff or the resident advisors, um, assessing if it's effective, if students are really being impacted by the programming that we're creating, that we're putting forth, or some of the job duties that resident advisors have here at Florida Southern College. Um, so for continuing students, for example, a lot of the student population, by the time you get to the end of your sophomore year, right, you've established your solid friend group. They're probably going to be the friend group that you're with because whether it's through your major, through the people that you live with, or if you're Greek affiliated or anything like that, you're starting really to develop those solid friendships that from year to year you're going to have now. Uh, and so, with that being the case, engaging from the level of um, community living and having events and really wanting to create a sense of belonging, it's more difficult. One, geographically because of off-campus housing, and you don't always have a communal place to meet. But then two, some of these juniors and seniors, they don't necessarily want to engage with community living and what's going on. But there's still the aspect of, okay, we still need to know where students are. We still want to make sure that they're doing well mentally, physically, spiritually. And so what does that look like? So then critically thinking, this is where this comes in. Okay, so maybe we need, instead of figuring out what we think our students need, um, surveying them, finding out what they want, um, and also changing some of our systems, changing some of our events. Instead of having them come to us, going to them, bringing things right to their front door, um, and making it also uh, sustainable for our resident advisors who themselves are students. So they're not burning themselves out trying to do and accomplish tasks that might be impossible, not because of anything that we've asked them to do or that they're not capable people, but just the students aren't engaging with it because of all the external factors that I mentioned. So I think that critical, that part of critical thinking, and we're kind of playing some of that out right now. And I've seen, at least for for my portion, speaking with different resident advisors from last year and this year, who have really appreciated the effort of trying to mitigate the work that they do so that aligns more with the population that they're facing. So I can't necessarily say I've seen the outcome. I think we're kind of in the middle of it right now. This is the first time we're testing out a new system. But my hope is that the outcome is that we see higher levels of engagement, and the RAs don't feel as burnt out, or that their efforts are in vain. And so I think that critical thinking was the portion of the critical thinking is, okay, what really is the need? And the only way to find out the need is really asking the students. And then how do we meet them at the intersection of that need? So yeah, I think that's the latest thing I can think of.
All right. No, that's awesome. That's great. I know I'm thinking about just in the classroom sometimes when the Wi-Fi goes out, and I have a whole presentation ready to do for, I have an hour and 45-minute class and I have no Wi-Fi, or the computer the projector's down or something. Just being able to kind of like think on your feet and being able to, okay, well, how can we still get through this without just kind of throwing our hands up and saying, okay, well, if Wi-Fi's down, so we're not going to do anything.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I also deal with why that's another portion of what I deal with is the Wi-Fi in our off-campus locations and houses. So when it goes out, how do you support a student when you can't immediately say, okay, here's a modem, here's a router, or it's going to take Spectrum a few days to get out to that location. You make sure you have a list of resources, places on campus where there is Wi-Fi, right? Have that backup of saying, hey, and understanding that part of the critical thinking too is, okay, there's one, the actual physical aspect, I don't have Wi-Fi, but two, the feeling of like, I'm here at this university, I'm paying for this service, why don't I have it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so constantly giving updates to students, I found a lot of time that there's the problem solving aspect, but then the critical thinking is, okay, they just want to know that something's being done and that we haven't forgotten about them. And so that critical thinking is, I'm in constant communication. Hey, don't forget, these are the other places on campus that have Wi-Fi. You can still get done what you need to do. If you're not, if you're not wanting to be on campus, well, hey, here's locations. Here's Starbucks. Here's the public library at Lake Morin that you can go to. If you want to stay inside, then the option is use your personal hotspot. But I think having that, like, okay, I can't give you the exact thing you want right now, but I'm equipped to tell you that you are still able to accomplish what you need to accomplish, because I can give you these other resources. I think that's always having a backup, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's absolutely. You always have to have a backup, I think, because you just never know. The printer could jam and you don't have the handouts that you're trying to give for your presentation, or your computer died. All different things could happen. So I know, being a teacher for the last 25 years, knowing that could happen, I know that I always have like A, B, and C in the back, just in case,
right.
This is exactly what I wanted to do, but now I can move forward with something else. Okay. So how about what advice would you give to a student who maybe kind of, whether it's with a roommate or a classmate, or maybe they're even going into their first internship or their first professional workplace, where they might kind of come across maybe say a difficult colleague or someone that they're trying to work with that there might be having some problems? Like, how could they problem solve, or think critically to overcome that obstacle?
Sure. I think a big part of a successful work environment is emotional intelligence. It's said that your IQ is something that you're born with, right? And you can extend it to a certain extent, but your emotional intelligence is something that you can keep growing. So when we're talking about working with difficult people, I think the first thing is or a difficult colleague, I should say, uh, is really having just that conversation, and I think it depends on, I guess, what the situation is, but um, hearing them out, letting them talk, not doing the avoidance dance. Oh, I don't like that person. I'm it's difficult to work with them. If I don't have to communicate with them, I'm not going to. It's the opposite, right? You have to kind of train your brain to flip and say, okay, why is this, what's the obstacle for us, right? What is the obstacle for me? And I think part of that, the first thing to do in critical thinking is, okay, is this something that I'm struggling with? Am I the issue? I think that's a hard question to often ask ourselves. Like, am I the problem? No one wants to be the problem, but then realizing, like, oh, maybe I'm just taking something in a way, or I'm taking offense, or, or not understanding what they're saying, and maybe it's on me. And then there's the other side. It's not on me. And so either way, I'm going to go talk to this person, right? I'm going to go have a conversation from a stance of humility and say, hey, I am, I'm not sure what it is in this situation that, and maybe it's me. Like, I'll put it back on myself at this point in life and say, hey, maybe it's me that's not grasping something, but I really want our work relationship to be healthy. And in this aspect, I'm not getting what the issue is. Maybe you've been here longer, or you have experience in this that I don't. So could you give me some advice or some clarity so that I can best support you in what you're doing? I think if you come at that standpoint and show that, like, you're not in any way thinking that you're superior, that often helps, right? Especially if you're saying, hey, I want to be able to assist you in achieving the goal that you want to achieve. This is what I need from you. I think that really helps. But all that to say, I think it comes back to kind of the confidence we talked about earlier, and saying, hey, I want to have, or being brave and saying, hey, like, can we have a conversation? Because there's some tension here. There's a difficulty in the relationship that needs to be addressed. And once you've thought that through, like, what you're going to say, right? I want to just recommend, like, in the moment being like, hey, what's your problem? That rarely works. But taking a step back, assessing, and then saying to the person you're working with, okay, this is where I'm at. I think that produces healthy results.
Yeah, there's two things I want to touch on. I really like how you said, ask yourself, am I potentially the problem? Because self-reflection is where we grow.
Oh, absolutely.
And like you said, it's very difficult. We don't want to be the problem, but I think it takes a really big, strong person to be able to sit back and say, okay, maybe I am, especially if you're finding that you're having the same kind of conflict or the same kind of struggle with multiple people. You're the common denominator. So it does take strength. It does take strength to be able to say, let me look at myself and see what am I doing to contribute to this? And maybe it's nothing, but maybe it is.
Right.
But I also really like how you talked about the way you come at people. It's all about how you address something. And immediately I'm thinking about, just as a personal example, cut my lawn the other day and went a little too far over on my neighbor's side with it too low. And he came out and, hey, do we have a problem? And I was like, what? And he was mad that I cut his grass too low, versus if he came over to me and said, hey, this is our property line. You like your grass shorter than mine. Can you please not cross the line? But it was the way he came at me, which made me very defensive. And all of a sudden I was like, whoa, what a jerk. And his message was fine. It is his property, but it was his tone and the way he handled it. And I think that it's really important. And for those of you that are listening, you absolutely need to think through things. Avoid those knee-jerk reactions where you just have an emotional reaction to something. You get slighted, you get offended, you think someone said something, you took something the wrong way, or maybe you truly are, it really was hurtful, but the way that you would say it immediately is going to be completely different than the way you say it if you sat with it for a minute, thought about it. I think there was a saying, I saw something like, write an angry email, write it all out, then read it, and then delete it.
Yep. Love that.
Yeah. Back in the day before email was really big, we would say, write a letter. If you really have something, really, you want to say something, write it, seal it, leave it alone for 3 days, go back, reread it. And then if you still feel that way, then you could say it.
Right. Yep. And I think what I love, it's the word tone, you know, it's rarely, and I would say it's 80% tone. I would say we don't give tone enough credit. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Because people, especially today's day and age, people think more with feeling first than not everybody is able to rationalize. So you can only control your response. That's what I love to say. You're never going to be able to control how other people react. You can only control your response. So tone is huge.
Yeah. I mean, at the risk of sounding cliche, there's that, life is 10% what happens, 90%, how you deal with it or how your attitude towards it. But yeah, tone is huge. Tone and your nonverbals. We were just covering this in my professional development class, how like the words you speak are only like 7% of the message. And then tone and your body language make up the rest. So it is very important, like how you present, because sometimes your facial expressions or your tone speaks so loudly, I can't even hear the words that you're saying.
Yeah. My grandmother, on my dad's side, she used to say, "Fix your face."
Say that all the time. Or I'll say, "What's wrong with your face?"
Yeah. She'd like attitude on the face. Fix it. Fix your face before I fix it for you. So it's the same principle.
Yeah, very cool. I got something in the chat pod. Let me just check real fast. Oh, it's our buddy Yovan. Good Lord. He's not allowed to make comments. There he is. I think we have too much fun at work. Okay, well, this was really good. This is really insightful, Ray. I really appreciate you being here with us. Is there anything that you would like to, leaving kind of like last closing, words of wisdom, some remarks, something that can leave the students with something to think about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing is relationship first. I tell my staff, I don't lead systems and processes. I lead people. And so your relationship with because most of you, right, your students, you're going to be you're probably not going to be the supervisor starting out. You're going to be the supervisee. And so manage your relationship with your supervisor well, learn how to lead up. And what I mean by that is understanding the communication, understanding the thing that's going to make your boss's or your supervisor's work life easier and in your communication, so then they can also in turn resource and support you better. So make sure that, and then the critical thinking part of that is, okay, I need to put myself in their shoes and realize, and maybe ask them, what is your job entail? One, because hopefully the career field you're going into, you want to move up in it. But two, if you understand what they're doing, what their needs are, you can tailor how you do your job to specifically support that need that they have. So critically thinking and realizing how they think. And the reason I said relationship first is because you have to be able to understand your boss's, I don't really like the word boss, your supervisor's state and where their mindset is most of the time. Because if you're trying to communicate to somebody who is a very analytical type A, mind operates in tasks, and you're trying to communicate to them as if they're more of a free flowing, kind of go with it, happy, not that the other person can't be happy, but the more free flowing, I guess, go lucky kind of person, and expecting that communication style to be successful, it won't be. So really being able to pivot and adapt and tailor yourself. So it starts with the relationship. So the two things that I would leave you with starts with the relationship. and ends with a relationship. And then put yourself in your boss's shoes and figure out
I
your
don't know,
supervisor's
but I'm
shoes.
here.
So those two things. I hope I answered that right.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. No, relationships are incredibly important. Unless you're living in a vacuum, you are going to have to work with people. You're going to have to collaborate. You're going to have to overcome conflict. And I really like the thought about thinking first, making sure that you're saying what you really want to say and not emotionally reacting, and putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. Like, how would you like someone to come at you with this problem, and kind of maybe play that scenario out. But thinking about more than just the situation at the hand, like what could be the consequences or the outcome. So all that goes into like kind of that problem solving and critical thinking to make sure that you're not just with your blinders on thinking this, I can only get past this one part.
Right.
Really like that a lot. Well, again, thank you, Ray. It was very insightful. I really enjoyed learning a little bit more about you and where you come from, and the knowledge and expertise that you bring to Florida Southern. And thank you for sharing with all of our students different ways to problem solve and use critical thinking in the workplace.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank
Hope
you
to be
so
back.
much. Oh, I would love that. I would love that. All right, everybody. So again, if you are here for attendance purposes, please make sure that you do scan the QR code or click the link in the chat pod. If you want the link for these recorded videos, please send me an email. Other than that, have a wonderful day, everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.